The vast majority of violent tornadoes occur in the afternoon and evening, but what if a monster tornado rips across Alabama on a Sunday morning? What if it struck 5 churches during one of the longest masses of the entire year? This is the story of March 27, 1994. Spring is in the air in the Sunbelt, and with the daffodils and warmer temperatures comes something a bit more sinister: the threat for tornadoes in the Dixie jungle. So far, the weather has been eerily quiet, with just a few weak tornadoes across the Deep South. But the atmosphere was gearing up for quite the show over the weekend. This is what a classic early spring tornado outbreak looks like: an unusually strong surface low moving towards the Midwest, pulling in warm, moist air from the Gulf at breakneck speeds. The resulting movement of warm air is so strong that it sets high temperature records across central Illinois. Aloft is a sharp, negatively tilted trough in the jet stream, with the winds spreading out over top the record warm surface air by the late afternoon. Extreme levels of wind shear or change in wind speed and direction with height are clear as day. This was March 14, 2025, a day of numerous violent tornadoes across the Mississippi Valley. Now compare this data to March 27, 1994. The trough in the jet stream is far away from the Deep South, and this time has a positive tilt. Looking at the surface map, there is no singular strong area of low pressure situated anywhere along this frontal boundary, with the setup far less obvious and occurring 30 years prior. Would the Storm Forecast Center get it right? Well, it was a tough call, but meteorologists knew that if storms could fire, tornadoes were certainly on the board. The front that draped over extreme northwestern Alabama was nearly stationary. If a surface low formed anywhere along this boundary and underwent cyclogenesis, the process by which surface lows mature, storms would form along the frontal boundary. But if not, discrete supercells might not fire at all. In the overnight hours of March 27th, the Storm Forecast Center issued a moderate risk for Alabama, citing damaging winds likely along with the possibility of tornadoes. And then, with each passing hour, the concern amongst the forecasters grew. Although there wasn't a pronounced trough in the jet stream to the west of Alabama, something needed to support severe storms, there was a smaller trough to the north. This meant that eastern Alabama and western Georgia were directly beneath the right entrance region of the jet streak, another region that supports continuous rising motion due to winds spreading out aloft. This is extremely important for supercell thunderstorms to maintain themselves for extended periods of time. And while there was a lack of moving boundaries that could initiate storms, it soon became apparent that there was barely any cap in place. While the typical tornado outbreak boasts a slight temperature inversion 1,000 feet above the ground, acting as a lid for severe weather that finally breaks around peak daytime heating, this was not the case in the early morning hours of March 27th. Every tornadic ingredient was already in place by sunrise, which is very rare and incredibly dangerous for those not paying attention. Fall is about enjoying the few remaining good weather days. I want to show you the shoes that are making this adventure way easier on my feet: the Vessi Stormburst high tops. These things are built exactly for this kind of day: damp, muddy ground, uneven rocky terrain, and unpredictable weather. They're perfect for chasing clouds, or in this case, an underground coal mine fire. The Stormburst high tops are completely waterproof thanks to Vessi's Dymatex technology, so walking through puddles, wet grass, or even the local creek doesn't bother me at all. They've got incredible traction too. The all-terrain sole grips onto slick rock and loose gravel. It's super useful out here, where the ground is a mix of loose coal, soft clay, and melted asphalt. Plus, they're lightweight, breathable, and always comfortable. I've been out here for hours, and my feet still feel great. They handle the outdoors and my weekend projects, but still look stylish when I head back into town. And if they get muddy, no problem. Wipe them off and they look brand new again. Also, these Vessi socks are super soft, moisture-wicking, and made to pair perfectly with the shoes. So whether you're exploring a new trail, navigating a rainy city, or, standing above an active coal mine fire, Stormburst has you covered. With a 1-year warranty, 30-day worry-free returns, and free shipping on orders over $110 in North America. Grab your pair at vessi.com/weatherbox or scan the QR code on screen to get 15% off your first order. You won't be disappointed. As the sun rose across the southeast, a line of heavy showers existed along the cold front, creating a pocket of cool, dry air that spilled into the warm sector. This boundary was all it took. As the warm air pushed up against the boundary, a supercell erupted near Columbus, Mississippi, and the weather office in Birmingham issued a tornado watch for northern Alabama. It's 9:18 a.m. on a Sunday. Families are just waking up to go to church. As the storm flew northeast at 50 miles an hour, it took on the classic rotating shape of a supercell in a highly sheared environment. Utilizing the newly constructed WSR-88D NEXRAD radar at Maxwell Air Force Base, the Weather Service was confident that this supercell posed an immediate threat for tornadoes. With no other storms around, this cell would be a huge problem for the next several hours. James Spann was live on air broadcasting the tornado warning for northern Calhoun County as a large tornado touched down just to the south of Ragland. Within minutes, it began destroying the poorly constructed homes along Alabama 144. Cecil Campbell's trailer was flattened, but thankfully she was in Chicago for the weekend. Miraculously, all residents survived, although 8 people were hospitalized due to injury. The tornado continued along 144, destroying the Fellowship Center at the Providence Baptist Church. A mile to the northeast, it had been a beautiful spring morning at Lake Neely, and many fishermen and campers were enjoying the outdoors. Eddie Alexander had heard a tornado was coming and raced his boat to the shore. Seeing the massive funnel just above the tree line, Eddie had 2 choices: run to his truck in the parking lot, or dive into the brick boathouse 100 feet away. He made the right logical choice, huddling on the floor of the boathouse as the walls crumbled around him. But Betty Brown was not so lucky. She tried getting back into her truck as the tornado hit, and was struck with large flying debris, likely from one of the many boats and trucks in the parking lot. When the dust settled, Eddie saw the cab of his truck fully flattened. Across the water, 300 yards away, 35 feet high in a tree. A mile to the northeast, parishioners at 10 Island Baptist Church were singing the first hymn of the lengthy Palm Sunday service, which would contain a full reenactment of the final days of Jesus' life. Wasting no time, the churchgoers rushed to the basement right as the tornado hit. Despite minor scrapes and bruises, everyone in the church survived. As the twister carved a path through the hilly forest, Donna Donner was drinking coffee and doing laundry in her Peaks Hill Township home. Her family owned 9 dwellings along a small lake in the peaceful forest. She was about to leave for Anniston to see the movie Schindler's List when she heard the noise of a freight train. She grabbed a coat and ran to a central closet as the 3-bedroom home exploded. All 9 of the family's homes were a total loss, but the residents escaped alive. 3 miles to the east, Chandrasekhar Savant was driving his family in a van on US 431. With the 200-foot ridge directly to his west, it was difficult to see the tornado until it was too late. The tornado tossed the van with his family inside, and unfortunately, he was killed. Another disaster was imminent 3 miles away. The Mount Gilead Baptist Church was filled with 70 parishioners in the midst of a Palm Sunday service. They ducked under the pews when the tornado hit, but thankfully, the roof was lifted and tossed into the mountainside a few hundred yards away. For this reason, debris did not rain down upon the churchgoers, and thus everyone escaped uninjured. As it plowed through the forest at 55 miles an hour, Mass continued at Goshen United Methodist Church north of Piedmont. Church is a dangerous place to be during a tornado. People all over town whose homes weren't directly in the path of the tornado were now gathered in one singular place that was in the twister's path. Reverend Kelly Clem was leading the Palm Sunday processional while her husband Dale was with a group of students on a Native American reservation in Oklahoma. Kelly knew there was talk of some thunderstorms later in the day and had umbrellas on hand to keep people dry. At the half-hour point, some children were singing a hymn that would introduce Jesus, played by Kirk Scroggin. But suddenly, the power went out. The backing track was recorded onto a tape machine, and with no power, the children were forced to sing a cappella. Survivors described it as a spiritual experience, hearing the heavy wind and rain batter against the church while the children sang. Nobody of the 46 parishioners knew there was a tornado bearing down. When the first window broke, everyone hit the floor. John Minton happened to be filming the tornado from his home 6 miles southeast of Goshen at the exact moment the church was destroyed. Unlike what happened at the Mount Gilead Church, the front wall of the church gave way and bricks, cinder blocks, and wooden beams fell from 30 feet high directly onto the congregation. The entire structure folded inward as Kelly watched in horror. Although a half-mile wide, the tornado was moving fast, and less than 30 seconds later, the ordeal was over. When the dust settled, Pastor Kelly looked up from the altar and saw the sky. In front of her were over 100 bodies, covered in dust, some living, some not. Officer Mike Nessler was the first emergency responder on the scene. When asked about what he saw, he replied,
15 years of law enforcement, this is the first situation I've ever gotten into where I did not know what to do. I just had a cerebral meltdown for a second, trying to figure out what to do.
As the rescues ensued, the death toll within the church stood at a staggering 20 people, with 90 other parishioners injured. Among the dead were entire families, as well as 4-year-old Helen Clem, Kelly Clem's daughter. Kirk Scroggin, the man who played Jesus, was also killed. The tornado had hit the church at what was likely its peak intensity, and 2 miles away, Jeff Formby was running into his grandfather's storm cellar. It was Oliver Pope's 80th birthday, and family was celebrating the occasion at his home when Jeff spotted the tornado. He took out his film camera and snapped this harrowing photo, one of the few in existence of the funnel, a minute removed from demolishing the Goshen church. Notice the striking similarities to the Lake City EF4 of April 2, 2025. This frontal lobe is a horizontal vortex that wraps around the backside of the tornado, but only the front of the vortex is fully condensed. It wasn't over yet. A few miles away, Pleasant Arbor and Union Grove churches were also directly in its path. A third of the 65 parishioners at Union Grove ran for the basement, while the rest ducked below the pews. The strong winds tore the steeple from the church, causing the 2,000-pound bell to fall in front of the building. Had the bell fallen inward on the congregation, there would have been several casualties. Finally, while traversing Indian Mountain, the tornado began to occlude and lifted just before the Georgia state line. In those 50 miles, the tornado managed to strike 5 rural churches, all of which had an ongoing Palm Sunday service. Around 1 p.m., the Storm Forecast Center upgraded the severe risk level to high for eastern Alabama and northern Georgia, as several more supercells trekked through the region. The Goshen cell would go on to produce another F4 tornado in northern Georgia that would kill 3 people living in mobile homes. Amidst the recovery at Goshen, a conversation began regarding how churches can be responsible for alerting the congregation about impending severe weather. Today, this is mainly achieved by smartphones, which will emit an alert tone when a tornado warning is issued, even if the phone is on silent. But in rural areas, churches must have a weather radio, at the very least, that is programmed to receive warnings for the corresponding county. The Goshen United Methodist Church was rebuilt down the street, but a memorial exists on site of the former church to honor the 20 victims of that horrible day. Thank you for your time. If you'd like to send me weather-related items or a letter, my P.O. Box is on screen.